right, Internet. Welcome to part 4, I think, or 5, I don't remember. Either way, we're going to do levels 12 and 13 today for Natas, and it was a learning experience, let me tell you. I had to cheat my way through 12 and 13, and I feel like, based off the previous couple of levels, I'm going to have to cheat all my way all the way to the end. But with that being said, I'm learning a lot, which is really cool, and doing these videos is a really good forcing function for me, basically, to not skip to the next level and actually genuinely think through what I learned, why there's a vulnerability, and what it originated from, and all that stuff. So anyways, on this one, at first I got to this page, and let's kick it in, right? Natas 12. So I got to this page, and I realized that you can upload an image, and it states that there's a max of 1 kilobyte, which is really, really tiny. And when looking at this, I said, okay, well, I'm going to try to upload something, and basically none of the images I had were 1 kilobyte, so I basically had to create something in Paint. And when doing that, I uploaded it, and then it just showed me my image. I then went to the source code tab here, and started looking through the code here. As usual, kind of understandable. Most of it is a little foreign to me, but some of it makes sense. In a nutshell, when looking at these, you can see really a few different functions here. They're doing a few things, but in the end, whatever you put into, let's scroll down, so whatever you put into, or whatever image you upload, the output of that is going to really bring out two things. Those two things that it's going to bring out is a random name and a random path of where that's stored. And you can see that, basically, you can see that here. So there's a function here, which is asking to basically make a random path file name. So that's going to be the path file name that's created, and then there's also a random name string here. So generate random string, which is going to be the string. So that's going to be your name tagged with a JPEG, and that's going to be stored in a random location, at least the way I understand it. And when looking at this, you can see at the top, and this is not something that was obvious to me. Let's get that clear. I was reading through this and I was like, okay, so I'm just going to upload a whole bunch of random stuff, and I'm going to play around with this. And I started looking at different functions. I was like, maybe this function is about vulnerable. Maybe this one's vulnerable. Then I started looking into the constant variables, the global variables in PHP, because I've done Python, JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, but I've not done PHP myself. And I was looking at these, and I said, okay, these are global constants, so this post, the files, what do these mean? And just diving into all that stuff and reading about it around the interwebs. And then I realized I wasn't really getting anywhere. So I started cheating slightly. So I looked at the individual we've seen last time, which is Chris Dale. So I watched this guy, didn't see what he did. I tried to do what he did, and there was 3 other tutorials that I followed along, and all of them failed. The way that they approached it, for some reason, didn't work on my machine. There may have been some really tiny thing that I did wrong. I'm not sure what it was. But really, what they're doing here is they're just creating a PHP file and uploading it here instead of a JPEG file. And I did that, and that worked for me. But the way that they approached it didn't work for me in the sense that they just tried to basically cat out the password. So on the previous levels, on I think 11 or 10, we had to basically go into a certain location in the file path, and then there's a folder called Natas_webpass that has all the passwords for a series of levels. And they just directly catted that out. So they did cat that location, cat the password, and they gave it back to them. I couldn't do that for some reason. So that was useful to understand how others did it, but it wasn't useful for me. Here is a diagram that I'm not going to talk about now, but this actually leads me to a point that I wanted to discuss here, which was code injection. So code injection, interestingly enough, seems to be really something that keeps cropping up with a lot of these challenges. And when I'm reading adjacently or indirectly to this realm of web vulnerability, pen testing, and hacking, etc., I'm starting to realize more and more that the concept of injection, code injection, command injection, different types of input into a function or whatever that is, that tends to be kind of where everyone else, that's where all the hacks are, basically. That's where all the attacks that I've seen, they all kind of bubble up into this area. And I'm sure there are other forms that I'll come across in the future, but it seems like they're all deriving from a similar philosophy of that you have basically, and this is like how computers work, right? So you have an input, you have some sort of function, and then you have an output. And it seems like that if you have user space here, so this is the user land where all the the users hang out, and this is where all the computers hang out. in server land. And there seems to be always some sort of manipulated input that goes in here, and that manipulated input does some sort of weird machine function here that's unexpected from the developer. So we have a developer here that's doing their coding and stuff, and this unexpected function occurs because this input was inputted in a malicious way, and then that in the end has some sort of output that comes out that's unexpected, which could be user data, that could be user data coming to them, that could be them getting access to everything inside of here. So there's all these different things that are occurring, and it's just interesting to see that a lot of this stuff seemingly is repeating itself. So with that rant out of the way, I came to this OWASP page where basically it talks through a series of code injection ideas and stuff, and you can see that they're referencing PHP code here, which was a good sign to me because I was like, okay, cool, it looks like I'm going in the right direction. I started reading more about here, and then you can see that they're actually talking a lot about different ways of actually doing code injection, usually through text, but then you could extrapolate that into uploading files of PHP. So that was nice. I read that was useful. Then I came across this Git page, and the reason I came across this is because this tutorial here was actually super useful for me, and this is what helped me actually get through this level. So thank you very much to Ivan, because this was useful. And if I scroll down here, you'll see that they're actually talking about Natas 12 here. And the code that I used specifically was the code from here, where they, instead of catting it out directly, what they actually did is they put in a PHP script here, and we can zoom in here a bit. So this PHP code here, what's occurring is that basically they're doing a few things. So they have a pass-through function, right? And so this pass-through function is going to take this, basically this string, which is going to be a command string. That's going to go into this global constant of Git. So we're going to get the command string. We're going to pass it through this function here as a executable command, and then that's going to be what we're going to be receiving. And when reading through this, I researched, pass-through, what was the difference between, pass-through exec and system. You can see that they link this here, which is useful. It's a Stack Overflow tutorial or response, and that was kind of insightful. And in the end, we went with pass-through due to the fact that it takes usually some sort of text, executes that as a command if you were on the shell, and then outputs a string. And that string that it outputs is the password that we want. So basically, we're going to go through and I'm going to show you how this is done. So if we go back here, I actually had to do this through Kali Linux again. Reason being is that when you do it correctly, you get an output that is not nice, because the antivirus system on my machine basically blocks it from happening. So it says you no longer get anything. I'm gonna have to log in here. So 1 second, peeps. Natas 12. Okay. Cool. And another thing I'll probably need to do is drop this PHP file on this desktop, which I'm not even sure if that just happened. 1 second, internet. All right, we want to move this here, so let's go here, desktop. Can I do that? Maybe if I do that. All right, we're in. So this is my PHP file, and you can see if we open it up, it's going to basically show exactly what we had originally. So this is, can't zoom in for some reason, but if I could, you'd be able to see that better. And, ooh, not that, oops. So you can see that we have the basic code that I showed you in the previous blog. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use Burp Suite, again, because we need to basically both upload the PHP file as well as edit some commands as we go through, and I'll show you what I'm doing exactly. So I'm going to go through here. We're going to open up 12. We're going to choose our file. So we're going to choose our PHP file. We're going to upload that. And then it's going to give us a JPEG. So we're going to open this. Incorrect. I did it wrong. 1 second. So we're going to upload this. So as we uploaded it, what we're actually going to do is we're going to come back to Burp Suite, and I need to send whatever I just did to the repeater. So if we scroll, I need to do this by number here. Okay. So I need to send this to my repeater, and I need to alter a few things. So what we're going to change here, and I wish I could zoom in to show you this. Maybe there's an option somewhere that I don't know about, which I'm sure there is, because there always is something I don't know about. Ha! Figured it out, internet. Thank God for magnifier. So what I wanted to show you is, hope you can see this and it makes sense. So there's a few different things here. Right here you're looking at the max file size. So if we go here, and hopefully magnifier doesn't break me. You can see that there's a max file size, which is the 1 kilobyte that was mentioned in the kind of the screen that we looked at. We can see the file name here, which is a JPEG, and that's the random file name that's created with the extension of JPEG. And then right below here, we see the file that we uploaded, which is the PHP, and then we have our PHP code below here. So the thing here is, what we need to do is we need to actually alter this JPEG file name to a PHP, the one that they automatically created for us. And then with that being said, if things work out the way that I want them to, and magnifier stops helping me, we should be able to send this through, and it should come out as a PHP file. So if we drop that there, that's a PHP file. Cool. That's what we wanted. So if we select that, it's going to take us to another screen, which should error out, I'm assuming. And then the next thing here we need to do is actually add in our command to dig deeper. So we're calling this CMD, and I'm going to try to magnify this once again without screwing everything up. So here we're magnifying, so I'm magnifying CMD. So this is the variable that's inside of our PHP script. And it says, basically this is our argument that's being, going through the get constant variable, going through the pass-through function, which is executing this command. And then we're going to add to this command. So what we want to do is we want to cat out, and we're going to have to add this URL encoding so it's understood by the URL itself. And then we're going to hopefully do this correctly. One time and done, one and done. Natas 13. And if I zoom out of the magnifier, I'm going to have something that is not what I wanted. All right, internet. We screwed up together. How does that feel? All right, so what I'm thinking, internet, is I'm thinking that this gobbledygook before that maybe screwed us up. So we're going to send that again. And we're going to do this. And we're going to cross our fingers and hope that this works. Ah, yes, I think. Huh. All right, internet. I'm going to chalk that one up as a fail. This is a sad face. This is my sad face right now. I couldn't figure out why it didn't work. But in a nutshell, if you do what I just did, it should work. Where you've adjusted the code in here, so you basically inserted this PHP code within a PHP file that you've changed the file name here. You've uploaded that into the browser, and then it should kick back what you want to see. So if I sent this to the browser, open that, the preferred experience would be if I put that in there, it gives me the PHP file. It presents back something that's not an asking for me to log in again. Where it basically presents back some code. Can't log in now. Perfect. Anyways, I'm just going to show you this here. So basically it presents back something along the lines of this screen here. And so once you've got this screen, the next thing you need to do is basically add the bit of code that I mentioned previously. So as you can see here, this individual, let's go 13, here we go. So basically what they added and what we would add if my computer felt like, cooperating, you would basically include this bit here. So you would basically state that, oh, look how big that is. Okay, that's more like it. That was huge. Anyways, we would put something along these lines inside of the URL, and that would look something like this. Where basically you're going to say the command, and that command's referring to the command inside of our PHP script. And then we're going to say the command that we want to do is going to equals. Here you can see it says states equals. We're going to cat out the specific folder path, and that folder path is going to be where all the other passwords are stored. And the one we're searching for is Natas 13. So we're going to go to the etc folder, the Natas web pass, and then Natas 13. That's going to then spit it back out to us on the web page, which would be, web page. It's going to have our secret here, and then we're going to plug that secret into the next challenge. So if you did it, correctly, and it worked perfectly for you, it would come out something like that. So you would have your next code. And if I hopefully go to this, let's get out of here. Let's go to 13. All right. So on to 13. Sorry for that fail. Don't know what happened and couldn't figure it out. And it's getting late, so on to 13. So 13, we have a very similar situation where we need to upload a file here, but we have some new sanitation policies in place, or sanitation technical preventions from us getting in. And for security reasons, we're now only accepting image files. So this is going to be a tricky one, and I actually learned quite a bit for this one when reading through different ideas and understanding more about how code injection works and how you can actually manipulate certain files to be interpreted as something that they're actually not, which I thought was pretty neat. So in a nutshell, let's take a step back, and I'm going to show you some pretty drawings on a black screen that hopefully, yeah, okay, it works, cool. So what we're going to do here is it's stating that it wants a image file. So the file that we shoot in is going to have to be a JPEG, right? And I know that, actually let's take a step back. I know that because if we go to this file here, we go to our source code, you click that link, it takes us to the source code. And then we come in here and all the code is very similar, except for there's one part that's new. And the new part that we're looking at is specifically this series of functions here. So if we look specifically at a few things, I'll point out, is our max file size is still 1 kilobyte, which is super tiny. But next we actually have some interesting things. And this function here, exif image type, is something I actually Googled, and we'll jump into that in a second, but that's something that to note. So like we see that and we're like, okay, that's funky. We'll look at that later. The next thing is that we can see that it's tagging again. Once again, it's tagging a JPEG here. So it has to be a JPEG file that we're uploading. It has to be 1 kilobyte. And this exif image type is going to check the type of file that you're uploading. So we can no longer just upload a PHP file. That's no longer an option. It has to be a JPEG. So with that being said, the next step is like, okay, so how do we actually do this? How do we upload something like that? Well, the first things to first is, as I mentioned, I wanted to look up this function and see what it was about. So I went to this the manual page, right? So on PHP, and if you scroll down here, they kind of talk you through what it is. And basically, what it's doing is that this function is going to take in a file, right? And that file is going to be an image type. And what it's going to do is it's actually going to read the first couple of bytes inside of the image file to detect if it's an image file specifically. And this is another interesting thing that I thought to myself is, okay, so first couple of bytes, how many bytes, right? Because say if there's a file here and we have a series of bytes, when does this function stop reading? Is it here? Is it here? Is it here? So that was something I had to kind of jump into and read more about as well. So as reading, I didn't actually jump to this piece next. I'll get to that later. So I was trying to figure out how do you upload a PHP script inside of an image file. So that's what I was searching. And I found actually a couple interesting blogs. So this blog was interesting, where basically he talks through, it basically complains about how coders, don't develop PHP correctly for security purposes. And it talks through the problems and stuff. And in this article, it's really, useful to kind of get an overlay of how PHP can be manipulated through image files, which I thought was nice. The next thing here was actually the answer. So I did cheat on this one as well because I needed some assistance to understand what the hell, how you do it. So this was another good article and blog post that actually walks you through all the different steps that are needed. The next thing here is an interesting post that I actually wanted to learn more just about web shell detection prevention. And also there's another one around keeping your shells under cover. So this is actually an interesting thing that I'll talk about at the end around kind of mitigation steps after we've exploited this. So let's jump back here. OWASP has a really good blog basically talking about unrestricted file uploads. And it's referring to basically uploading a file that you shouldn't, and that does something sketchy. So if we do a control for JPEG, that's kind of what I did. And if you scroll through here, you can see there's actually mentions of how you can actually you can adjust file extensions. And this is the first tactic I took, and it didn't work. But I wanted to explain it anyways because that's kind of the process of this, right? So the first thing I tried was actually doing something along the lines of this, where I was like, okay, well, if it doesn't want to take a PHP file, then maybe I can just upload the extension of JPEG at the end of at PHP. So I tried this, it didn't work. And my conclusion was the fact that, remember that we looked at this function specifically, it's checking the first couple of bytes. And then I said, okay, well, if that's the case, then I'm just going to keep banging my face against the wall and trying the same thing. So then I came down here and I saw that they stated that if you add a semicolon, then potentially that could actually adjust the function and the way that it actually kind of interprets that file. And then it allows it basically to come in. It's permitted. So I tried this, and that was a fail as well. So my next thing was like, okay, so if I can't do this, it needs to go in a JPEG no matter what. That's the issue. So then I scrolled down a bit more, started reading further and further, and then if I get down to, there's a piece in here. So this is the part I was looking for here. So if we go down a bit further below what we're looking at, you can see that there's a mention of a kind of a subtopic that states that you can use a file type detector to detect a file that's being uploaded. But at the same time, and in the same token, they mention on this point here that this can be bypassed, and you can see that here. So this can be bypassed by inserting malicious code after some valid header or within the file's metadata. So the valid header piece was interesting to me because remember in our, when we read initially on the PHP for the function that we're looking at, it said it read the first couple of bytes. So I correlated header to first couple of bytes. So the next thing here is that, okay, I read that, that was nice. I wanted to figure out what were the first couple of bytes inside of a JPEG file. So when an interpreter is reading a file, what's the code that it reads to understand where I can put my stuff? So I came to this Wikipedia article that was interesting in itself, magic numbers and how they work and how they're incorporated into different operating systems and how it originated. Actually, if I scroll down a bit, sorry if I'm making you dizzy. It originated with version 7 of Unix, which I thought was neat. Anywho, so if we scroll down here, you can see there's a mention of JPEG, right? So here is the golden goose. This is what we needed, and this is going to help us get this challenge passed. So in the JPEG, you can see that it's basically mentioning that as an interpreter reads this file, it's looking for ASCII, and the ASCII it's looking for is FFD8, and then it ends with FFD9. And then if it's a JPEG/JFIF file, which most of newer files are, then it's going to have these ASCII letters, as well as potentially these. And that's if it has EXIF files, which ours doesn't. So we're going to be looking for these. So the next question to myself was, how do I know what hex is inside of a file? I knew that there's hex dump and things like that in terminals, but I wanted to see if there's something that I could actually examine a file with. So I created a simple picture, which was just a black image. And in that black image, actually, I probably open it up for you here. So let's go to this one here. No, I can't. I altered it, so it won't let me open it. Anyways, if you actually look at that image through a tool called HXD, it's actually going to pull out the hex of that file. And in here, you can actually already see that I've inserted my PHP code, which is why I couldn't open it previously. So I inserted the PHP code a little bit after the initial bytes. And if we actually do a side-by-side here, make that a little smaller so it's readable. Actually, just X that out. In this Wikipedia article, let me try to find what we were just looking at. So here we go. Here is the connection right here. So we have our JPEG, right? And then we have the mention of it beginning with FFD8 right here. So if you actually look here, you can see that we have our FFD8, and then that's correlated to this gobbledygook here. And then we also have, this is a JFIF file because you can see that has the JFIF here. And then that's correlated to the 4A. So that's going to be the 4A, 46, 49, 46. So those are the initial bytes that our interpreter is going to read. So our PHP code is going to want to be entered after this point. And to be safe, I put mine, way further past that down here. And that was the interesting bit to me. So we've done that. Now the next thing we want to do is actually incorporate it. So hope to God that, this actually wants to work with me this time. If it doesn't, then you're just going to have to believe me. You're just going to have to believe me, internet. Just trust me, Trust a stranger on the internet, and they'll show you everything you need to see. So let's go to here. But we actually need the link. Sorry. All right, this is what we want. And then we want this. Okay. All right. Okay, so we've gotten to the point where we need to look at. So we're going to upload our file. I've already swapped over. Oops, we got to choose our file first. So we're going to choose our file, and we are going to go to desktop, and I've got it on here as untitled as well. So we're going to open that. We're going to upload it, and it's going to bring us back a JPEG. So we're going to have to run this through Burp Suite once more. So we're going to want to go to the history of the calls that I've just made. We're going to go to the one that we did most recently. We're going to send that to the repeater so we can change it to a PHP format. But here I'll point out, and maybe we can magnify this. So here I'm going to point out that basically if you look here, you can see that it's a JPEG format, which is what we need to change. So we need to change it to PHP. You can see that we have our gobbledygook, right? So we have the first characters that are red, which are these ones here. That's the FF8 or D9 or whatever. And then we have the JFIF stuff. And then right below that, we have our PHP code, which is here. So hopefully, if this goes to the way I expect it to go, which it didn't do last time, if I send this, it should work. If I open that up, yes, internet, so happy, it worked. All right, so this it didn't work all the way, so we still have to do the other stuff, but this is important. This is really important to point out. Last time it didn't work, I don't know why, but screw that. Here you can see that basically what it's noticed is that there's an undefined index, CMD, command, etc. in this location where this is where the PHP file was uploaded. Whoops, that's not working. Anyways, you can see that this is being uploaded here, right, on line 6, and then it's warning you that this cannot execute the command, blah, 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 blah. But that's basically stating that it is interpreting our PHP as PHP. So now, if we include our command, which is what we initially tried to do last time and it didn't work, this time it should. So if I do the URL encoding for the space, which is the %20, and then if I do the cat of Natas webpass, oh, not plus, internet, I'm just so excited. I'm just so excited I'm screwing all this up right now. I just want to show you that I'm worthy. Accept me, internet. So here, PHP, so we got that, we got the command, we're gonna cat out Natas 13, and if I push enter, it's gonna work. See? See, internet? I told you. I learned something. So this is our password. So hopefully if we just come here and we alter this to 14 and we put in 14, we're going to get an error because I think it's because we went to the index and not the actual page we wanted to go to. 14. Damn shit, internet. That's right. I know it's right. It is right, internet. See? I told you. Wait a second. Internet, I just did the one that we wanted to do with an image file for the wrong thing. We wanted to cat out Natas 14, not 13. So that's how you get to 13. But if we do this again, we're going to get 14. There we go. So there you go. It worked for 13 and 14. Sneaky, sneaky, extra sneaky. Yeah? You thought I couldn't do the other one. But I can do both. Both, internet. All right, cool. Enough of that. We're going to close all that out and act like it never existed. All right, so that's how we've gotten through 12 and 13. So the next thing I actually wanted to talk through at the very end, and you can shut this off now if you're not interested in how you actually mitigate these security flaws, but I am. So I'm going to talk to you about what I learned. But before I talk about preventing this and detecting it and things like that, there's actually some really interesting points inside of this article if you're interested. If you go down a bit further in this blog post, they actually talk about different ways to masquerade and hide your PHP scripts or other scripts when you're trying to do some sort of code injection on a website. And there's some interesting things here that I wanted to point out. One is specifically they talked about actually inputting it into the accept language section of a header of a post or a GET message. So you can actually adjust this piece here and have your PHP script on the server running. And that was an interesting one that I thought was pretty cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And below this, there's another one where they do some adjustments of strange blacklisted file names, such as these. But I'll point out one or two more that I thought were interesting. So this one is really about obfuscation. So it's not really hiding the code, but like making it really hard to reverse engineer or at least look at. So this one basically has excluded all the white space. So this is the same code as below, but it just, crunched together. Another one is scrambling. So this is kind of a sort of obfuscation as well, where you're basically changing the text into like a weird scrambled kind of, you have to reverse engineer situation where this code here, you can see that it has the eval, k, etc. Well, that's basically kind of mixed and matched here inside of this scrambled code. And then there's also encoding and compressing and replacement of techniques. So you can basically take your code and kind of like, you can encode it with base64. You can, inflate it or deflate it with some gzip stuff. You can do rot13 situations where you kind of move things around by 13 characters, really make the code hard to actually read from a interpreter or a human. So that was the basically hiding the code. So the detection and prevention piece here. So like one important thing here that I noticed is that they talked a lot about actually detecting certain functions that shouldn't actually be used. And if they are used, you should be detecting them. And there's a series of commands here that are all either commands that are being run on a terminal or that are being run through a function such as pass-through. So it's trying to decide which functions you want to incorporate into your program and which ones you shouldn't. So that was interesting. So another one here is actually detecting the length of the string. So if there's some like ungodly lengthy string that is not necessarily human readable or writable, this is one. So where if someone tries to compress or obfuscate their code and you can actually detect the length of that, then that'd be another way to detect if someone's doing something sketchy. And there's a few more in here, but we'll go to the prevention. So they really make it simple. They put it into bullet points, right? And I won't go through all of them, but like I mentioned, so if there's functions specifically like these here, if you can go without using those, that's probably the best approach. But if you do have to use them, then using these specific functions surrounding these functions, so putting this around this, and that would help you escape different shell arguments or command arguments that are put inside of these functions. So like we did with pass-through, remember we had our get function, and then inside of that we had our command function or our command variable. So if this command variable is put inside of this get constant variable, then when it goes to the pass-through, and then we have this pass-through surrounded by an escape, right? So if this is surrounding this, then there's a good chance that we would have been caught and it wouldn't have actually helped us. We wouldn't be able to get into where we wanted to get to. So that's one important thing, is if you have to use them, escape them. Here's another one for whitelisted file types. So like the one that we just previously actually got through was the JPEGs. So they basically stated that only JPEG formats are allowed, but we were still able to actually basically embed PHP inside of that due to the fact that most interpreters read the first couple of bits on that file. And if we can actually inject our PHP past that and still make it think that it's a JPEG, then we'll be successful there. And then I think this probably is the most important of all of the points made here. And the reason I state that is because this is something that I've seen in many of the CTFs that we've gone through together, the different levels, is that the user input is like the worst. Never trust the user input, and to always try to basically, make anything they put in there as negligent as possible. This one is probably, don't use other people's code blindly. It's a nice to say, but in all reality, most developers, 85%, if not more, of their code is probably, stolen from others. And they've just kind of repackaged other things and altered other people's functions and snippets of code. That's why basically everybody's code is built on top of open source libraries that are maintained by one human. And with that, internet, we'll leave it there. So this is a long video and slightly painful and really warm, but I will see you next time. Thanks for listening.